this is Candace Crane, General Manager at Sheridan Honda and Power Sports. And this is I Want to Do That, Women Helping Women Explore the Outdoors. And today we are talking about off-roading vehicles. And our guest is Mimi Tate, who you grew up here in Sheridan, correct?
Yes.
I've heard a lot about
life.
you. Okay. You've been a customer of Sheridan Power Sports,
Forever.
previously Valley Motor, forever. And I was referred to you, Mimi, because I heard that you have been riding ATVs, four-wheelers for a long time.
Long time.
Okay.
Probably 35 or 40 years.
Okay. So
Every day.
So you know
Every
a little
day.
bit about an ATV.
Yes.
Okay. So tell me about, do you remember the first time you got on one when you were a child, maybe?
Oh, I wasn't a child. I got it for work. When
You had it for work.
And I
Okay.
was probably 30. I'm 75. I mean, that's 45 years ago. Yeah. 30, 25 or 30. I bet I was close to 30.
Okay.
But I got it to work, to gather horses, to irrigate, to work with, to fence with, so you didn't have to take so many steps.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, you have a ranch, a horse ranch,
Yes.
correct? Okay, and so how are you using the ATV for work or for utility?
Well, we buy and sell horses for a living. We buy them and ride them. My husband, Jim Smith, and I do it together.
Nice.
And we just start out in the morning from the house to the barn on the four-wheeler.
Yeah.
And then you go gather the horses with the four-wheeler.
Yeah.
And if you have to go back to the house and get something, you get the four-wheeler.
Yeah.
And sometimes he trains rope horses, and they have what's called the roping dummy. And
Oh, sure,
you
yeah,
hook
yeah.
it up to the four-wheeler, and you go around and around and around the arena, and the ropers come behind it and rope the dummy, whether they head it or they heel it.
So multiple uses for the four-wheeler.
Multiple uses.
Okay, now were you using horses prior to the four-wheeler to get around the property?
Well, I guess I was when I was little, we didn't have one. Yeah, and like to irrigate, the people that worked for Dad, they had to ride a horse
Yeah.
and carry the dams. I mean, it's
Yeah.
unbelievable what they had to do.
Yeah.
And then my father got really old in his 80s, and he always rode and did horses, but the four-wheeler kept him alive.
Because
he
it's
yeah, 'cause he could go
more
use it.
predictable than the
Absolutely.
horse, easier to get on than
Oh,
the horse.
yeah,
and-
absolutely.
Okay. So what's been your experience with side-by-sides? Because I'm new to the whole power sports industry. I'm a general manager of a store, but I'm new to the industry. I grew up in the Midwest where I didn't have exposure to four-wheelers and side-by-sides. And so for our listeners that don't know what a side-by-side is, I know I've explained this to my parents. So side-by-side is basically an ATV, but you sit side-by-side, right? You can
Right,
have people
yeah.
sitting next to you.
It's like sitting in a car.
It's like sitting in a car. Okay.
Yeah.
So what's been your experience with side-by-sides in comparison to an ATV?
My husband has a side-by-side because he has a bad back, and the side-by-sides, I guess because of the width and stuff, they're smoother. They ride
Okay.
smoother, and they don't jar his back as much. But I like the four-wheeler because it's littler. You can get out of things. You can cross ditches, and yeah, I'm used to it. I just like the little four-wheeler, the quad.
So if you had an opportunity to get into a side-by-side or the little four-wheeler, you're like,
No, I have my choice.
You
Whatever
have
I
your
want
choice.
to voice, I can do either.
Sure,
but I
sure.
like the little one because it's handier, and I get more done with it.
okay,
Yeah.
so we're talking a lot about utility and work on these things.
Right.
And have you done much recreation with
I
a
have done
side-by-side
no
or ATV?
recreation.
No
I just
recreation.
work with mine.
Okay, and I've heard that is pretty common
Yeah.
for ranchers and people that
Absolutely.
are using them for work. So, what's been your most? I mean, I'm sure you've spent obviously a lot of hours on a quad or an
Correct.
ATV. What's been your most memorable experience on it?
You know, I don't really have one because I mean, whether you wrangler, I guess in the snow, and I have a four-wheeler one, and they go great in the snow. The snow has to be pretty deep for you can't take.
Are
the
you putting
four-wheeler.
tracks on it, or are you just?
No, I don't put tracks.
Okay,
But you put it
okay.
in four-wheel drive. The first ones I had, they weren't four-wheel drive, and
Yeah.
they didn't go anywhere in the snow.
Yeah.
But you can go through a couple feet of snow with these, and they buzz. You know, you just want to
Yeah.
pay attention. But
Yeah.
no, I don't have one particular. I just, like I say, I wouldn't live without one. I wouldn't trade 1,000 horses for my quad.
And you were telling me earlier that you get up in the morning and you're almost like on your your four-wheeler right
That's
away.
right.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
it's parked right outside the door, and I get on it and go to the barn. That's the first thing I do.
Okay, so for our listeners that are thinking about making a purchase, excuse me, for an ATV or a side-by-side off-road vehicle.
Correct.
Let's talk about that. So we haven't really mentioned much about recreation. I haven't used an ATV for work or utility the way that you have. The only
Right.
experience that I've had on them is recreation. It's been pretty minimal. But from a recreation standpoint, you can take them up in the mountains. You
Correct.
can go on the trails that are
Right.
50 inches or less that you can't get into with a truck or a side
That's
by
right.
side, right? And you can use it to go like put your fishing rods in
That's
it,
right. You
or
can put all sorts of equipment on it. That's absolutely right.
A lot of hunters use them as well.
Hunters
I
do,
understand
yeah.
as well, right? Okay. So for our listeners that are considering getting one, let's talk about some determination. So the first thing they want to think about is how are they going to use it, right? So you're using it for utility.
Right.
And tell me a little bit about the difference between, you've mentioned a couple of times the smaller size versus the larger size. Like why do you prefer the smaller size? Is it because of your stature or is it because of how it performs?
No, it's how it performs because I can go, I have to go in little places and turn water on and do ditches and wrangle the horses. And my husband, he does most of the stuff, and he does it in the side by side. They're just handier for me.
Okay.
I like them because they're handy.
So but he also has those back issues, right?
Yes, and he has back issues. Yeah.
Okay. Now, what about with the smaller size? You have a smaller engine,
Right.
A little bit less power. Does that bother you at all versus
It has
the larger size?
plenty power for any woman that wants to go
Okay.
do recreation with it. I
Okay.
think. Yeah, I don't know how fast they go. They go fast.
Yeah. Do you know how many cc's? Like, are you at like 400 cc's or?
I looked at that and I don't know, but I'm. Not the one where they do the racing and stuff, but probably the one below
So
it.
probably
it has to
somewhere
have quite a
between
few
550
cc's.
or 400
Yeah.
to 550 cc's. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. And then the other considerations would be where you're going to be going, right? So the larger ones that have more power, I'm assuming that you've been on some of those. In my experience, especially the difference between the gear shift box, which is typically you're going to find in a Honda, versus the CVTs or the belts that you would find on the Can-Ams.
Right.
From a recreation standpoint, I found that the Can-Am product was a bit more enjoyable because you're not shifting the gears as much. And I think you mentioned your husband on the side-by-side. He noticed that as well, that it's not as bumpy of a ride when you don't have
it's much smoother.
Yeah, when you don't have the gearbox. So considering, where you're going to ride, are you, what's your party size? So again, ATV versus side by side, there are ATVs that can seat two people, one in front of the other.
Right.
Has that ever been anything that you guys have purchased or that you've looked into?
No, because I don't. I'm not thinking about taking. And I take a lot of people on it. Jump on and I'll take you here. Jump on, I'll take you there.
Yeah.
And they just sit on the side and I sit on the side and it works. But just to go, if you were going to go a long ways, like on a snow machine, I'd never go take two people.
Or taking it up on the mountain or something, because you're
Yes.
doing it around your property
Exactly.
as you're entertaining
Right.
guests and getting from point A to point B. Versus if you're deciding that you want to recreate on the mountain,
Right.
Having somebody in back of you.
Oh, they're easy. They hold two people they can hold three people.
Okay.
They hold two people very easily.
Yes.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
you're like, I don't care that the side by side could hold
No,
6. Even if
that's
you were to
right.
recreate in the mountain, your preference is going to be
the
that
little one.
That
And I don't have
ATV.
a big one. Mine's not big, It's a
Yeah.
rancher, but it'll hold 2 or 3 people easily.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah, you'd want, and they have bigger ones, that have more power. But I don't need any more power either.
Yeah.
Mine goes plenty fast.
So it's really, what I'm hearing from you is really understanding how you're going to use these machines, right? Because
Exactly.
it can definitely seem intimidating. I know for me, when I first started at the store and I saw, a line of 7, 8 ATVs and
Right.
they come in all different sizes
They do.
and they just seem really intimidating, know,
Right.
and I want to be able to get out and explore the mountain. And I like to fish, like to find places that are difficult to get to, and
Right.
I'm not afraid of hiking, but
4-wheel drive, you definitely want.
yeah, but I'm also at a point where if I'm going to be hiking 3-4 miles and it's, and then I'm going to be fishing and then I need
Right.
to get back and then I got to get down the mountain, depending on what I've got going on that day, it would be a lot easier to just trailer up a four-wheeler and just
absolutely.
be able to go.
Yeah.
So understanding how you're going to use it. And then also with the ATVs, I know obviously the side-by-sides, you have a bit more space, but in the ATVs, you can also get like things to put your gear in, or
Absolutely.
right? So,
I think you can with either.
Yes.
Yeah, like you can get gun mounts and for rifle
Yep.
mounts and things like that.
yeah, I know
Absolutely.
Can-Am has the link system, which I don't know if you've seen before, but basically it just connects onto the flat parts of the ATVs,
Right.
and you can get different size bags or different size
And that's
cases
important.
and boxes and
Absolutely.
things.
Yeah.
So that you can use those things in there. Okay, what about now manual transmission versus automatic transmission? I got on a few ATVs recently just to see the difference and how they rode. You drive Honda product. They're going to have more of the manual, the gearbox.
But mine, they have the one. Well, mine, I like to shift the gears.
Okay.
But it'll also, you can press the button where you don't have to shift
And
the
then it
gears.
just turns
I don't know what that's
automatic.
called.
Yep.
Yeah, and it does automatic.
Okay.
So it'll do, the Honda will do either.
And what's your preference of shifting? Like, why do
I
you
don't
like
know
to
why.
shift?
Because, and the new ones are so great because they shift down by themselves.
Yeah.
So that's really, they didn't used to do that. And you'd tell the kids, shift that thing down, shift it down, shift it down. But now the new ones just do it on their own.
Because if you're getting up to a certain speed and you don't shift down,
Right.
what happens if
Or
you don't shift
up.
down?
Oh, if you don't shift down, well, then it's just like running the clutch on a car.
I see.
Yeah.
So you're just burning through it.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
And
So-
they don't shift up by themselves, but they shift down by themselves. So that's quite important.
And on the ATVs, there is the ability to shift with your hand, and then there's also the ability to shift with your foot, depending on the model that you have. What's your preference?
I had an old one, the foot one, to start with. I mean, I haven't had that for 30 years.
Yeah.
So, no, I don't know why
I found
anyone
that-
would want the
okay.
foot one.
Okay, I'm glad that you said that because I just got on one
Right.
recently and I had tennis shoes on.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've got a size 7 foot. I don't have real big feet.
Right.
And I really struggled to
Yeah.
get that thing, to get the
No,
shifter
yeah,
up.
I would never have a foot one.
Okay.
I mean, you just have your hands so easy to use.
Yeah, so much
Exactly.
easier to use in that
Right.
regard. Okay, what about riding gear? I know you're obviously using it for work, so
Right.
you're wearing pants, I'm
I
assuming.
don't ever wear shorts.
Okay,
That's
you're
right.
always in jeans
And
or
I always
pants.
have rubber boots on. I ride in rubber boots, I irrigate in rubber boots, and I work in rubber boots, whether it's 10 below zero or it's 100 degrees. And so I've always had boots. Yeah, and you should wear boots. It's not a bad idea to wear boots.
Now,
I
what
think.
about your husband in the side-by-side? Is he cutting corners on his outfits because he's
Definitely not, because if he isn't wearing cowboy boots, then he's wearing lace-up boots to
Yeah.
walk in. And in the winter, we wear muck boots.
So it's just a good practice. Obviously, you've got
It's a
boots
good
partly
practice.
because you're on the ground and
Yes.
there's snakes and there's
That's right,
you know,
exactly.
things on the ground that you're going to want to protect yourself
Yeah.
from. Plus, it's just dirty. But
That's right.
when you're riding these machines, part of that the boot also will protect you.
Protect you, and they're hot. I think if you were down there and you just had flip-flops on or something, your
Yeah.
feet would get too hot.
And why not shorts for a side? I've heard this, not to wear shorts on a side by side, but why not?
Because I've never worn shorts in my life.
Well, Mimi!
Or a sleeveless shirt.
Okay,
Has nothing to do with the
Take it from
four-wheeler.
a hardworking woman. You don't wear shorts and you don't wear sleeveless shirts. Okay. But I have heard that if there were to be an accident or something were
That's
to tip
right.
off, or
You're
even if you have to
way
jump
better.
off,
You bet.
you're just
If you
better.
have pants on, that's absolutely
having
right.
that gear on. Okay.
And I don't wear. I mean, I don't wear. I never wear a helmet, but I guess kids should wear.
Kids should wear a helmet
It's
for
not
sure.
Probably
Yes.
a bad idea.
And the smaller ones that can be sold to children under 16, they have to. There's limitations. They're regulated.
Right.
They've got limiters on how fast
Right.
you can go. And I was doing some reading in preparation for our conversation, and what I was reading about is a lot about teaching the kids how to use the throttle and the brake, but also just going uphill and going
Safety.
downhill and
That's right.
just because
they're dangerous
they
on
are
hillsides.
dangerous. Yes.
And they need to be aware of that. That's
Yes.
absolutely right.
Yeah, I know you were mentioning earlier about knowing your land and
That's
being
right.
able to feel
And
more
I know
confident.
my land.
Yes.
But if I didn't know my land, I tell you, when you get tippy, you pay attention.
Yeah.
Because I've had a lot of friends that
have tipped over and
bet.
it can be dangerous. Yeah. And I was also reading about similar to a snowmobile where you really need to kind of lean into the machine. I think especially for us women that don't have the weight proportion on that machine's going to be off, right? Because we don't generally weigh
I
as
guess
much.
I
but
don't ever lean.
You
And
just-
I
you
turn-
just keep going.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm after the horses and stuff, and the four-wheeler's fine.
yeah.
But I'm careful too.
Yes,
Yeah,
and-
you want to be careful.
Yeah, and you have the good technique. So if you were to bring out, let's say I were to come out to your property
Right.
and I want to learn how to ride an ATV because eventually I want to go recreate. So I want
Right.
to go to a place that's safe for me to be around an expert and to learn. What are some things that you would talk to me about or that you would teach me in getting me ready to go recreate on the mountain, maybe by myself?
Start out slow. Yeah, and watch your turns. Yeah, you don't want to turn it, especially on a hill where it would tip over with you.
Okay.
Be careful of the ditches and holes in front of you.
So
you're
be
not going to
watching.
bounce off. Exactly. And
Okay.
just go slow to start with. That's the main thing. Drive
Okay.
those things slow till you get used to them.
Now, what about the ditches? You're approaching one, I see it.
Slow down.
Do I just slow way
slow
down
down,
and then
way
I can
down.
go
Yeah,
through it?
exactly.
Okay. And what about a hillside? Now, I know on a snowmobile, you kind of want to go straight up because you want to, take advantage of the momentum and
Right.
not take a turn to where you potentially tip over. Is it the same concept on?
No, I don't think it is. You don't have to, and you could go straight up or on the side. Same thing. Shift down and go slow.
Go slow.
When you're up, when you have a steep hill and they
Yeah.
have a lot of power, just
Yep.
put them down in low gear and go. Yeah.
Okay. Now, what about just even like as a new person getting on it? It can feel a little intimidating because there's a lot of buttons,
Right.
and it's not like you get in a car side by
Right.
side. You get into it, and it's familiar.
Like a car.
Yeah,
That's
it's
right.
familiar. You still have high,
Exactly.
low, and there's some things that you got to
Air
learn.
conditioning and heaters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, they're getting more and
Yeah.
more car-like. But the ATVs, you sit on it, and it's like, okay, I've got this handlebar, and I've got a throttle, and I've got a brake, and sometimes I've got two brakes, and sometimes I got a foot brake, and sometimes I have a button to push to turn it on, and then there's a
I
kill
don't
switch.
know. I've never seen anyone or any kid have a hard time riding it and starting out on it.
Okay,
None of
so
them.
it's don't
They're
overthink
easy,
it is what you're
you
saying,
bet.
basically.
That's
Just don't
absolutely
overthink
right.
it.
Don't
Okay.
overthink it.
And be with somebody who understands how to use that machine,
That's
because they
right.
are, in my experience, again, just being at a store where we sell multiple brands and multiple
Right.
product lines, there's small tweaks,
That's
right?
right.
They're not.
And everybody likes different brands. I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade the Honda for 500.
Yes,
100
you
other
are.
brands.
You are.
Yeah.
You are
I'm a
absolutely a
Honda
Honda person.
you
And
bet.
and again, in my experience, when I drove the two Hondas, they were great. But when I got onto the Can-Am Outlander, from a recreation standpoint, it felt
better.
so much more comfortable
Right.
for me. But I can also see, from your standpoint,
Right.
why the Hondas, make more sense, and
Yeah.
and from a durability and reliability place.
They're simple. That's why I like them. Simple.
Simple. Okay, so simple. What would you, if you're talking to somebody like myself who has no experience with this, and they're trying to consider ATV versus side by side, what advice would you give to them on how to make that decision on what to purchase?
I don't know. Those side-by-sides are pretty popular.
Yeah, they are.
I
They
hate to
are.
say it. You'd probably get a side-by-side. And I mean the best heaters in the world. My husband never uses his air conditioning because how long is that hot in Wyoming?
Yeah.
But that heater in the winter is better than a car heater, and
Yeah.
it's awesome.
Yeah.
And you go out and it's cold. If it's 20 degrees and there's a little wind, big difference.
Big
to have
difference.
that. Yeah.
And just to reinforce the side by sides, when you get in, you turn the key, and then you have a lever that just goes into either low gear, high gear, parking, or reverse. So there's no you're not shifting in a side by side in the way that you would
Oh,
necessarily.
no, in the side-by-side you don't.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, in
You
the-
just shift it like a car.
You just shift it like a
Exactly.
car. Yeah, I mean, you do have the low gear for low gear is for what? When you're kind of climbing.
I guess, yes.
Yeah, and then
exactly.
your high
It's
gear is
usually-
just if
that's
you're
right.
just going
And he
straight.
uses it to hunt with. So,
Oh, okay.
and he hunts a lot with his side-by-side.
He has a bed in
Yeah.
the back of his side by side.
Absolutely.
And so he can get into places that are a bit more difficult to get into,
Yeah.
does his hunting, and then
That's right.
when he's successful,
That's right.
he-
And they have winches, and then you get, you can pull things out.
Yeah.
Yeah, the side-by-sides are awesome. I don't have anything against the side-by-sides. I just like my little Honda.
You like your Honda ATV. Okay, so knowing the advice I'm kind of hearing is figuring out how you're going to recreate, how
That's
you want
right.
to use it,
What you wanna do.
maybe trying them both out. I know if you come to our store,
Try
Sheridan
'em
Power
both.
Sports, you can get in. We've got a demo ATV, we've got a demo
Exactly.
side by side. For me, just even getting into them and driving around the parking lot,
That's
you
right.
can just learn
Exactly.
so
You can
much
tell.
about how you feel and how comfortable you
Yeah.
are and how it performs. Do you know of any other resources, Mimi, that you could recommend for women that are like, gosh, I really want to, I've been wanting to buy an ATV, or I've been wanting to try
Go
ATV.
try them. I don't know, and I don't really know where they go try them. I don't know if any of the areas like where people walk and stuff here, they can take ATVs. Like, there's a walking place out on Soldier Creek, and
Yeah.
I don't know if they can take ATVs, but yeah, they need to go try one or
Yeah.
go to somebody's place that they know
That
that
has
them.
one, yes.
That's the best.
Yeah.
And try them.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of people, every ranch has four-wheelers.
Yeah.
So just find a friend that's a rancher
And they
go
can
try
let
it.
you get on it. All right. Well, for women, last question, Mimi, for women that are on the fence about off-roading in general, okay? Obviously, you're coming from a work perspective.
Right.
You've been doing this for a long time. What advice would you have that for women that are like, gosh, I really want to get involved in this sport. I really want to try off-roading, but it just feels intimidating. What advice would you share with them?
They'd probably they'd get a side-by-side.
Yeah.
I think because they're more like a car.
Yeah.
And then if it's cold or it's hot or you have all the
You can be more comfortable, and you can
be more
still
comfortable.
explore the
Exactly.
outdoors
Exactly.
in a way that you feel more comfortable in.
Yeah.
But for the crazy people that want to just have no
Just go.
shelter
Exactly.
and that want to go try those
do the other.
ATVs,
And if I got a side-by-side, I'd always get an enclosed one.
Okay.
I wouldn't get the one that just has, nothing on the sides.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why do that? Because it's
Yeah.
going to be winter here. Not
Yeah.
long.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a worse winter, too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Mimi, we had a worse winter last winter. So.
No, I just read, though, on Facebook.
Oh, my
Worse
goodness.
this year.
Again?
So
Okay.
I've lived here 75 years.
Yeah.
That was the worst winter in my life.
Yeah. Well, I
More
moved here
snow.
from Minneapolis and
Oh, you get
Minnesota,
snow,
and
yeah.
that was
Yeah.
the types of winters that I was used to.
Exactly.
So I was
You're
kind of
used to
hoping
it.
that we
Yeah.
were going to have a nicer winter.
And we
so-
might. I mean, we didn't plow our road for almost, I bet, 6 or 8 years, and we plowed it every other day last winter.
Well, you can also use ATVs and side by sides for that
Yes,
as well.
I think
you
you
can put
can.
your front plow on, and I know we
Yeah.
at work have our on our ATV. We put our
clear
plow
your
on.
driveway.
Yep,
Yeah.
and we clear the sidewalks
You're
and
awesome
we
for
clear
that.
and you can do it for
Absolutely.
your side by side. And the one thing that we didn't mention, just real quickly, is you can also put tracks on these.
Yes.
If you want to get out in the snow. Clearly,
That's right.
you don't necessarily put them on yours to get around your property, but
No.
if you want to get up like Red Grade here in Sheridan, it's an access point to the top of the
That's
mountain
right.
in town, and you
And
can
they're
only
better.
you
Yeah.
can only get to it in the winter with either snowmobile or
Yep.
ATV
And
or
tracks
side
are
by
way
side
better
tracks.
for that. Yeah.
Yes,
They're
it'll
good. And
actually.
they're good, and I guess you could chain them up, but we're not going to, snow gets that deep, we're not going.
Yeah, that's true. That's where you're not recreating. That's right. That is right. Well, Mimi, thank you so much. You're a
Thank
local
you.
legend here in Sheridan. I'm so glad for you that you were able to come on here and share your knowledge. And
Go buy a Honda. They're
we
the
really appreciate
living
it.
best.
Yes.
I wouldn't live without them.
Well, I'm glad that you like your Honda. Thank you so much.
Thank you.